feels like one lesson today is especially strong, which is this idea that we do pick our path, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, there's definitely some outside forces that influence us and kind of maybe shift us a little bit, but I don't think we can really, at the end of the day, not take responsibility for the choices we've made and the people we've become, because I think in a lot of ways we were and are responsible for that at the end of the day, even if it doesn't feel like we are. We've elected to associate ourselves with these qualities, these people, these circumstances, and for better or for worse, we've begun to qualify our reasoning in many cases for doing that. And I think that already is a sign that we have ended up here not completely by accident, that our intentions and desires and everything kind of melded together to create this reality that we find ourselves in. And it's tough at times to rationalize that, or to maybe come to terms with it, because we don't always want to feel responsible and we don't always want to take accountability. It doesn't feel good in many cases to do that. And whether it's taking a scapegoat or feeling a burden shift, we find a way in many cases to not look at ourselves as the tree, as the totality of these different components that have rooted themselves in these various directions, and we might not associate with them as much, and in turn we'll begin to feel less and less of an affect or effect when one of them gets kind of twisted in the wrong direction per se, but it is still a part of us. So we can avoid that sense of awareness, pretend that part of us doesn't exist, or that we left it behind, but there's always going to be an attachment, so long as there's the memory, the network of brain connections and sort of neural pathways that can branches to those. So I think this means we do have to step up in a large part. We do have to begin to view ourselves as not these small, insignificant creatures, but rather these, larger frames, these foundations, these, buildings of sorts that have been constructed over many years, in some cases many decades, with an incredible amount of resources, not just physically, but also, you could say spiritually or mentally. We've consumed, we've used, and we've, ultimately absorbed a lot to be able to get to this point. And we've grown tremendously. We've grown outward, we've grown upward in all directions. And we found ourselves, in many cases, as protection for others, as shade as a pillar, and many more analogies. We've used our talents and our expertise that we've drawn from with our, many cycles of circadian rhythm. We have much more rhythm than that available to us too. It's not even just the biology, it's the repetition of these deep, profound thoughts, of these more intrinsic feelings that seem to pull us towards something, that seem to help us to guide others. So it's not just, a series of coincidences per se, because we wanted to be here. We chose to exist past some point. We chose to continue to live on. Maybe we didn't natally make the choice to be here in existence, but innately, perhaps we do have some wish to keep on going, to recognize our own self through all this, to come out of it with a deeper and more holistic understanding of it all, of this root system, of this, branching, intertwining pattern that we see in almost everything we do. And of course we can have fun. That's probably one of the most important things, is to get a little crazy with it and to grow in new ways and unexpected directions, to feel ourselves moving a bit more freely without so much necessary guidance or, forcible molding. We may run at times into these more immovable structures, but somehow we oftentimes find a way to get around them. Maybe that speaks to our inner willingness to keep going, to survive and to live on, even if we think that there's nothing left for us. Somehow we keep building, and we keep expanding. And like a tree, we never stop. I mean, that's what's crazy, is we never stop. We never truly stop until the moment that our heart decides to give out on us, or we fall, we succumb to something else. And is a bit of a surreal feeling to think that even now we're growing. And it is kind of beautiful. So we must continue to be aware of these different holes we fill, these different spaces we encompass with our massive, respectively, our massive senses of self, relatively our, understandings of life and everything around us, and I guess also our spirit, our most pure, innocent, like, spirit that really and rarely cannot be contained. It can't be bottled up. It can't be put into a small space, because it isn't small. It's not something that has such finite dimensions. It pushes outward. It wants to grow. It wants to continue to know, to feel, and to understand. And that's pretty incredible.